All right. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Inga Cotton, and this is Charter Moms Chats. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms. And as always, I encourage you, if you're not already a member, please join the San Antonio Charter Moms discussion group because we're doing everything we can to support parents as they adapt to distance learning, remote education, have your kids at home, working from home, what to do when everything's closed, or almost everything. So that's the purpose of Charter Moms Chats, is to keep the conversation going. We can't have in-person events, but we can still be a community and support each other. So today we have a guest. We have Bekah McNeel, and she's been a guest writer at San Antonio Charter Moms for years now. But we have a special project happening this summer. She's writing a series about special education. So let me tell you just briefly about Bekah. So she is a native San Antonian. She has her own blog called Hall Monitor, and she writes for national publications about education and other issues. She has a husband and 2 children, and she also has lots of questions. So I'm really excited to have Bekah as a guest. So Bekah, I'll hand it off to you. Did I do okay on the intro? Is there anything you want to add?
That sounded like me, so I think you got it. I recognized that person.
Okay, good. So the special ed series that we're doing, it's 2 posts every month, and there's some great stuff coming in May and June. But I specifically today wanted to share with readers, in case they missed it on the blog or on social media. I'll reshare the links. The 2 posts that you did for April, and the post that you did to start off the series was about, we wanted something timely. That like how are special education students being served during social distancing when campuses are closed? And you found a bright spot. You found that at Assessment Intervention Management, also known as like AIM, that they are performing tele-evaluations so that children can still get evaluated for special education without necessarily having to be in the same room with their evaluator, which is pretty amazing.
That really is. I think, as any parent whose child has an IEP will tell you, that process of getting to the point of evaluation where you can start getting the accommodations and modifications that your kid needs can be a long road. There's a lot of, and you feel like every single day, from what I hear from these parents, is that it felt like every single day was a missed opportunity or lost learning. And so the fact that they've gotten this far and it was time for the school has like 45 days to do the evaluation. And for a lot of kids, the first semester was about going, okay, no, something's wrong. You make the request around the end of the first semester when the second round of grades come out and you realize, no, that this is really a problem. And then they have 45 days. Well, 45 days into the second semester, pretty much, we were getting close, I guess a little further, but anyway, basically a lot of kids were in the middle or waiting for evaluations. And if they didn't get them, then there'd be no IEP. And so all of the modifications they might need, even more now because we're doing distance learning, they don't have. And so for parents who had been through a long journey already, the thought of waiting and then starting this whole process over again in the fall, you're just looking at basically like a lost year of your kids' schooling, and then probably some lost time next year. And so the ability that AIM has now, after working through regulations and the limitations of the testing companies, because that stuff, they keep it heavily under wraps for obvious reasons. The fact that they've been able to do that not only helps these families who were in process and now their kids can start getting modifications in what kind of online tools they can have, the ability to maybe click on something to make written words be read aloud, that kind of thing. All of that also helps in when we go back to school in buildings, the rural students still were not being well served because there's not easy access to evaluations. And so if they can continue with these great, reliable, regulated teleevaluations, that is going to be a huge, huge win for rural students.
Yeah, so they've pioneered something that is
Yeah,
probably gonna continue even after, the pandemic gets resolved, because
yeah,
there was already a challenge in rural areas of students getting access, and it's always been like you said, the timelines, like, getting these things done is hard, and, I know I just, so as I mentioned to my readers, I have 2 kids. My son is on the autism spectrum, and so he receives special education services, and we had a tele-ARD.
yeah,
We did the ARD, like, by video conference, and, because it's part of the process of, getting him ready for 8th grade, is that we need to review what progress he made in 7th grade and come up with a new set of goals, and, um, so, if we hadn't been able to do that, tele-ARD, it would have really thrown things off, like, we wouldn't have been able to get ready for 8th grade. And that's one thing for us, is like, we've been through multiple ARDs. My son's been in special education since pre-K 4. So, but for a family that has been struggling, they feel like something's wrong. They feel like their child is not getting what they need at school, and they feel like time is passing by.
yeah,
I remember that feeling, like, in, kindergarten, when it felt like the accommodations weren't a good fit for my son, and I was really stressed out about, like, he hasn't made progress this year. What if this keeps going, right? Like, your
yeah.
mind extrapolates into the future and you get really freaked out, and you want to do something about it, like, right
Mhm.
away. So that's yeah, it's great to, like, we really need to celebrate, like, what AIM has done, like, how
Yes.
creative they've been, to
It's a
problem solve.
huge deal,
Yeah,
and it also will expand the number of people who can do these services, because if there's the more regulated and, not, I don't say formulaic in a bad way, but the more standardized it becomes, um, you could get to the point where it's easier for people to get licensed and whatever to do these things. And so um, that would be great.
yeah, and so, like, in the post, you described that, I guess, the evaluator was in one room, and then the child being evaluated was in a different room.
Yes.
Were they on the same campus, but, like, they
Yeah,
were
they
keeping
brought them
them
in.
separated? Okay,
It was They brought them in and basically, like, through different doors, led them to different rooms. And now that style of telecom, obviously, that's like, okay, well, when we're not separated by COVID, that will be completely unnecessary, because obviously they were able to be in the same place at the same time. However, it's early days, and they're needing
right,
to, like, there will have to be a way where um, when these things are done, it's not like, it's never going to be that the evaluators in their house and you're in your house and there's whoever and whenever is buzzing. It's going to have to be in secure places. But a
right,
secure
right,
testing site is much easier to find in far west Texas than a certified evaluator.
right,
And
right,
so so in these early days, the schools are still serving as the secure location, but in the future, it'll have to be more like probably a testing site, or wherever
right.
kids take their SATs, or a school, um, a classroom at a school, and then they'll have to do something similar for the evaluator, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah, but, like, in a typical testing situation, the evaluator and the student are, like, they're hunched over the same document, or the same
Right,
set
right.
of blocks, or the same set of cards, or, the same checklist
Yes.
and stuff, and it's not a social distancing situation. It's a really up close and
No.
personal situation. Yeah, and we don't know how long it will be before, we'll be able to be in situations like that, and you don't wanna put, evaluators' health at risk of having to, be that close to that many students if they, um yeah.
Yeah, and it's also, when you're talking about testing a child, excuse me, um, who's already overcoming something,
Mhm.
increasing the stress in their environment, whether it's by, like, okay, now we're gonna be in close proximity, so we have to do 5 extra hand washings and face masks and all that stuff. Anything you can do to keep their experience as close to their normal as you can is going to be helpful in getting a
Mhm.
result
That's
that's true,
true.
rather
Yeah.
than bringing them into an environment that's higher stress than usual.
Right, right. Yeah, I could definitely see that. That would throw off. I mean, depending, yeah. I mean, my son has autism and changes in routine. Even like this week, we're moving our exercise time from the afternoons to the mornings because it's getting too hot to go on walks in the afternoon. At least in our opinion. I
Yeah.
don't know. Some people do it
Yeah.
anyway. You know, it reached our threshold. It's too
Yeah.
hot.
I pulled myself out of bed an hour early today to do it.
Yeah, yeah, but even those changes in routine are hard, and so, yeah, it's
Yeah,
a thing, like, testing conditions, it can impact whether you're seeing what a child's capable of or not.
right.
Um, yeah,
And so, I mean, people are worried about, well, will talking into the screen affect it? And they're finding that there's ways to account for that. There's ways to kind of control for the experience of the kid as far as the virtual aspect of it. But I don't know, you have kids who are nervous about germs. And so, you know,
yeah,
and for the foreseeable future, I would presume that nervousness about germs is going to be a thing.
yeah, yeah, it probably is. Well, because they learn from us, they hear us being
Because
nervous
we're
about
nervous
it, so
about germs.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they're
it's true.
good. Okay, well, I wanted to transition to your second post from April, and the way you described it to me was that there was at a local elementary school, they hosted a parent meeting, and they brought in an advocate
Yes,
from the Brighton Center, right? So
yes.
that's one of the great services that the Brighton Center offers is they have special education advocates who can work with parents and help them learn the system. So they when they are interacting with the school, they understand the terminology and they know how to speak up for their kids. So that was so there was a particular parent and child perspective that you followed, kind of from that. They were the anchor for the story, right? But then the article had a lot of really great information that parents who are new to special education or even who've been experiencing it for a while, they can take that knowledge and then use it to get a better outcome from the ARD and IEP process, right?
Yes, and that I think when I went in and saw the thing in action, because I went to the school to hear that meeting, my first thought was, I can't believe that schools don't just host these things. Given,
Right.
like, that's not within the first 2 months of school, bring in your Brighton guy or a special education advocate or even, like, a super experienced special education parent who's
Mhm.
been trained, that they're not every IEP looks just like their kids.
Yeah.
But anyone with a whole lot of familiarity with the IEP ARD process could host these meetings. And I mean, my advice to after seeing that, my first thought was this should be happening on every campus within the first 2 months of school because the information he was giving was just very simple. How to know what each part of the IEP was, what questions can you ask, um, what's a way if you don't like what you see on this section, how can you push back or um, request something different, how to go in prepared, what is within your rights to ask for as far as advanced information, that kind of thing. And I'm watching these parents scribble, 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 scribble because, and I'm scribbling like mad just because this is not information that everyone has access to. And or not information that they don't hand that to you with your kid's first IEP. Like, here's
Right.
how to use
Right.
this, and here's a know your rights packet. And there's parents are just thrown into the deep end. And those IEPs, I've seen some that are like 30 and 40 pages long. They are full of jargon. There's some it's like legal documents. And I mean,
Right.
in many
Right.
ways they're compliance documents. And so the ability to understand that and then go into this really intimidating situation. Not a lot of parents don't know that they can bring an advocate, they can bring a doctor, they can bring um, additional family members, you can bring a reporter. you know, you can bring anybody you want. And I mean, you there's disclosures obviously that have to happen, but I've been to ARDs with people just to watch, and it's incredibly intimidating. And
Yeah.
Um,
Being outnumbered like that. Yeah.
yes, and they're all experts in their area, and nobody tells the parent, "You're the expert in your child, so we need to hear from you." They're kinda just shoving all this stuff at the parent, like, "Here's what we're
Yeah.
gonna do, here's what," and the parent, at the end of every ARD, they have to ask you, "Do you agree to this?" And the advocate, the amazing advocate from the Brighton Center was just saying, "You need to be prepared to say yes or no. Don't just say yes because it seems like what they want you to do. You have to
Right.
kind of ratchet up your, or um, maybe ratchet down your agreeability score and be willing to say, no, I don't actually. Um, I'm not
Right.
actually comfortable with this for whatever reason. And but it helps if you go in knowing that, so that it's not at the very end, because some of these things go on for hours.
Yeah.
And so by
Yeah.
the end, everybody wants out of the room. Like the social, I'd love to like have a bunch of psychologists go be a fly on the wall in an ARD and say what the dynamics are as far as human pressure, like the pressure that the parent is under to just go along, and
Yeah.
the power dynamics and all that. I think that they are like really not ideal environments for determining how best to serve students whose needs don't fit what most schools are prepared to handle.
Right. Right. Like if it's this right, parents feel outnumbered. There's a lot of documentation, like, like, so I remember getting handed like a thick packet and saying like this is the manual to ARDS, but it has a lot of fine print, and I mean I am a lawyer, but I found it hard to wrap my head around. And it's an emotional situation because it feels like you're being told everything that's wrong with your kid and why
Yeah,
your kid is broken. And that's devastating. It's hard to um to have a like functional back and forth about okay, well, this is what you think my child needs, but actually our experience at home is our child does
right.
better with this and this. Like that's the kind, like it should be a fact finding process. It should be a process
Mhm.
where like everyone's learning from each other, but instead I think the parents feel overwhelmed, they feel kind of boxed in, and they feel like pressured. It's like, okay, just buy the used car, just
Yes,
sign and get out of the room.
right.
But
Which
uh,
is like, it's kind of the experience a lot of people have, like, with their health care, where you
right,
go in and the
right,
doctor's just like, "No, this is the problem." And you're like, "Well, that's not exactly my symptoms." And they're like, "Yeah, but it's probably this, so just take the Tamiflu or whatever." And
right,
you're like,
right,
"Oh, okay, well, I have a rash," or whatever. And they're like, "Yeah, but it's flu season." And it can feel, I would imagine, a lot like that. One of the most fascinating things I found in my reporting was talking to a woman named Ann Childers, out of California, and her one of her big concerns is that we use deficit language on IEPs. Now, IEPs are mostly filled out through like drop down menus, like choose one of
right,
these things and stuff. It's not a People aren't like creatively making these things up every time.
right,
Um, they're essentially forms that you fill out, but you could change the options in the drop down menu at a high level to be more asset based. So it's not what does your kid struggle with, but what circumstances let them thrive. You know,
right,
Inga's son thrive or works best in situations where X, Y, or Z. Has an intense interest in this. Can that interest can be leveraged into a willingness to do this, rather than does not comply unless blah 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 blah, or um, requires X, Y, and Z to do basic tasks. All of that language.
right.
And they say, I mean, I couldn't ever find the statistic, but I've heard it quoted more than once, that participation in ARDS falls off around middle school. And the assumption
Mm,
was that it's just like all the rest of parent engagement, where parents just naturally become less um, hovery as their
right,
kid grows up
right,
and gets more independent. But the fact of the matter is that for a lot of special education students, that's not true. Um, a lot of those kids continue to need parent intervention for transportation, for help with or staying organized,
Right.
therapies, keeping therapy appointments. Like parents are still very involved. And
Yeah.
so the fall off in ARDS, uh, Childers was saying, may have more to do with the fact that these parents are just exhausted of hearing how terrible their child is. They're
Right.
tired
Right.
of I mean, if you've ever gotten negative feedback from your child or about your child, you know how like devastating that is as a parent, and to schedule it and sit and listen to it from, 8 different people at the school over and over and over and have it documented and just have it coming at you. It doesn't surprise me that
Yeah.
parents just get real tired of that real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And it needs to. I've had ARD meetings that went different ways. Like I've had ARD meetings where it felt like I didn't even recognize the kid that they were talking about. Like this doesn't
Yes.
even sound like my kid. And then I've had other meetings where it felt like they did understand. They had creative ideas about like, oh well, we think I experimented with this with our team, and like we think this will help him for next year, or like we have kind of a like or even like one of the key things that the advocate brought up is like you can call an ARD meeting. You don't have to wait
Yeah.
until the annual one comes up. Like you can say the plan needs to change, like something's not working. And then, hopefully everyone gets together and this meeting of the minds, this give and take happens, and it's in a constructive way about like, okay, we know your child has potential. We're just going to figure out how to get them there, instead of we're going to tell you all the reasons why your child doesn't fit in, they're broken, and they're never going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or like, here's how hard it is to educate your child. Here's every
right.
and I will say I educators are great, but I have heard a lot of hemming and hawing from educators about just how difficult it is to educate these kids. I hear it for kids who learn differently, kids in poverty, and um, I have a limited amount of patience as a reporter for giving like air to that side of the complaint, because it has to be done.
Right.
I get that I have you on record saying that these kids need more and the system's not equipped for it. And then now I want to know what you're doing. I'm really not
Right.
interested in further complaints. And if that's all you have, you're you're not going to get a whole lot of real estate in the story. And so
Yeah.
I as a parent, like that's as a reporter, as a parent, I love you teachers. It's Teacher Appreciation Week and I appreciate you, but this
Yeah.
this is what you signed up for as far as children. Children are different and they learn differently. And yes, they're difficult. And do we need to pay teachers more accordingly and give them more resources? Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
It is not the fault of the child for being difficult. It's not the fault of the parent for giving birth to a difficult child. It's it should be a collaborative process, like you said, of how do we get the resources that are needed for this unique student who absolutely deserves to be educated and absolutely
Yeah.
deserves for us, the adults in the room, to figure out what they need.
Yeah.
And those are the interesting stories to me. The people who are putting in the work and doing that and figuring things out and finding creative solutions. I am I'm just starting to get a little bit done with the "Oh, this is so hard. Oh, this is so hard" stories. Like it's, "Oh, this is so necessary, and here's the amazing creative things that we're doing to figure it out."
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what as I look ahead on the series, like the posts that are in the pipeline, and I think it's so important because our readers can access these posts so easily because it's in plain English, and you have like real life stories, real parents, real children who are experiencing this. But and it is focused on problem solving, right? Like
Yes.
we're showing parents like this is the terminology you need to know so you know what to ask for, and
Mhm.
here are things that are not identified at a high enough rate, right? So like we have some content coming up about dyslexia, right, which is a
Right.
very underdiagnosed situation,
Yeah.
and so as more people get aware of what it really is, hopefully they can you know, some people will identify it in their own children and get the help they need. And like you said, it's not about just throwing up our hands and saying this is really hard. It's like, teachers,
Mhm.
we know you are working really hard, and we appreciate it. And we, you
Mhm.
know, you and I both wish there was more, like, more resources, more help for teachers. We love teachers,
Yes.
but we all need to be focused on problem solving and helping each unique student, not complaining about why that student doesn't fit this system or doesn't fit this model, because every child matters, and
Yeah.
the adults need to work and find out what will help that student.
Yeah. If the tool doesn't exist yet, make it, create it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's what we're here to do.
yeah, 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 yeah. So I mean, it's a series about special education, but it's about celebrating. It's like raising awareness and celebrating wins and innovation
It's
and problem solving.
yeah, solutions. I am all about show me how you solve the problem.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, good. Well, I think our time is kind of running low. Is there any let's see, I will, as I update the description on this video, I'll add the links to your post, and I'm good at also, I'll put in a link to, well, it's in one of the posts, like, and if people want to learn more about Ann Shoulders and you know, how to avoid deficit language.
Oh, it's
And
so good.
I want to, actually, some of our comments that popped up during our stream. So Teresa Lawrence commented, she talked about, yeah, she agrees that schools should host more advocacy nights so that
Yes.
you know, parents are aware. I guess, yeah, I mean, Brighton Center, like, you know, so click through to the post and, you know, reach out to Brighton Center, and then they can, you know, and they may have to be virtual in the short run, you know, but maybe there could be, you know, ways to inform parents about that. Let's see, Teresa talks about the procedural safeguards. I know Teresa and I spoke the other day, and we were talking about strengths-based um, education as a
Yeah.
solution. So let's see, Brooke commented that the state is requiring more screening for dyslexia,
Yes.
and that's good news. Yeah,
Yeah, and they're
hopefully,
also funding it. They've added a weight for it. Um, one of the posts that's coming will talk about advocacy leaning toward having pediatricians screen for it. Honestly, a lot of these things, if they are properly screened at in the the early developmental years, 0 to 3, you could come into kindergarten with the tools that you need instead of
right.
the trajectory I'm seeing mostly is first, second grade, first, second, third, depending on the difference, how much it has to do with reading. You
Yeah,
start seeing
yeah.
first, second, third diagnoses. Well, by that time, you know,
By that time,
the parents are
they've
really
been through a
stressed out.
lot. Yeah, that's a tough road.
Ugh.
By the time you, and it's harder to catch up, right? Because the
Oh,
expectations of
yeah.
person to get content knowledge are pretty high in third through fifth.
And the kid's self-image
Yeah,
is pretty set as well. Like,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
we treat the kids like they're not noticing what's going on. The kids notice. They
yeah.
notice when they're struggling in class. They know who the smart kids are. My kindergartner always talks about who um, the responsible kids are in her class, and she doesn't count herself among them. Um, she's fine. But, they already know. They know where they sit in they know where they fall in the spectrum of, achievement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But and the comments, let's see, Brooke Lucero says teachers will get more training for dyslexia. So that's great.
Yep,
And that's part of that, right? The additional funding is, yeah, putting resources towards that. Teresa comments early intervention is key, and
yep.
that's, yeah,
And
yeah,
another thing that's coming through the post is that there needs to be more intervention before we get to a full-blown IEP. And we're gonna talk I
right,
have a lot of posts coming about that, about we can't just put all of this onto special ed. Like, there has to be stuff built in. Now that we know that kids' brains are all different and they all have different abilities and whatnot, we have to be able to put supports in place without section, that don't necessarily fall under section 504 or require an IEP. We have to be able to do some of those things in the course of a normal school day.
right, right, right. Yeah, making individualizing things, and making school a place for all kinds of learners, and not make it this kind of this adversarial process, right? Where a parent just comes in and feels intimidated, but more where the adults are always trying to help each child and be as
Yep.
welcoming as they can to the what's unique about that child.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a good positive note to
Yeah.
to wind things on. So,
Yes.
um, this is Becca. I hope you can come back next month and maybe yeah, we
Yeah,
can bring you back in
absolutely.
early June and talk about the post from May. And I know you've got your own work on the hall monitor, and maybe we can talk
Not
about
much
that.
of it lately.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
All monitors,
yeah.
unfortunately, been a casualty of COVID because ugh.
Yeah. Okay. Well, guys, there's some great stuff in the pipeline. So stay tuned for two more posts from Becca on let's see, it's next Wednesday, not tomorrow, but the next Wednesday, and then 2 weeks after that. So all right, stay tuned. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so
Signing
much
off.
for having me.
Bye. Thank you, Becca. Okay. Bye.